name is Nicole. I'm a producer for the Remembering Them podcast. The podcast is a platform for people to share stories and memories of their loved ones who have passed away. The podcast was created in memory of Dad, Bob Cecil. May he rest in peace. Your host, Mark, Ryan, and Luke acknowledge the rich history and importance of storytelling within the indigenous culture.
My name is Jorgi Skeen, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. Today we're meeting in Meanjin, and those traditional owners are the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge my people, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in today.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. Mark here, only Mark today. Ryan and Luke are away. And as our regular listeners would know, when one of the co-hosts or both of the co-hosts are away, the person that's on the hosting gets to have a free reign around what they're doing, the activity while they're away. Luke and Ryan unfortunately can't make us here today for this recording. They're actually taking a couples cooking class together. So nice, intimate class for the both of them. I believe there might be one or two other couples involved with that, but they're trying to refine their culinary skills. Luke is okay in the kitchen, I believe, but and Ryan does struggle, admittedly. So hopefully they have a good time and enjoy it and can improve for their respective partners by going back to them and learning something today. On to our guessing game. We still will have this regardless of Ryan and Luke not being here. So play along. Well, there's no other option but to play along at home and try and guess where our guest is from. I'm sure listening back to this, Luke and Ryan will try and have their guesses, usually terribly. So best of luck for you guessing at home. Clue number one. This city has the world's biggest children's museum, with over 472,900 square feet of hands-on exhibits and more than 130,000 artifacts. Just pause this now. I won't pause for an answer, but you can pause the podcast at home and try and have a guess there. Clue number two for you, if you didn't get that after clue number one. This place has a cultural, we're after a city, by the way. This city has a cultural trail that gets global praise. It's an 8-mile urban bike and pedestrian path and has been called a model for cities worldwide seeking sustainable art integrated design. That's your clue number two. And the third and final clue for where our guest is from today. This will probably give it away for a lot of you that are familiar with this particular city and event. So this city has the world's largest single-day sporting event. It draws over 300,000 attendees, making it the largest one-day sporting event globally. If you haven't already guessed at home, the city we're in today, excuse me, is Indianapolis in Indiana. So the first clue, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, aptly named, is the world's largest children's museum world's largest children's museum. Clue number two, it's called the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. Is the trail that gets global praise. And of course, this Indianapolis 500, which is held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, is the world's largest single-day sporting event. So Indianapolis has a vibrant arts and culinary scene with neighbours like Fountain Square and Mass Ave offering a blend of indie galleries, craft breweries and live music venues. The city also hosts one of the largest pop cultural conventions in the US, PopCon Indie, celebrating everything from comics to cosplay. Today's guest works in the tech world and brings a thoughtful, curious energy to everything they do. They share their home and with a cat named Sasha and spend their time doing yoga, exercise, home renovations, and meaningful conversations. Here's a fun fact. They once spent a summer living in Sydney, Australia. So yeah, I'll definitely go into that during our conversation, I'm sure. So our guest today from Indianapolis in Indiana is Collin Farias. Welcome to the Remembering Them podcast officially, Collin. Thank you very much for joining us all the way over from Indianapolis in Indiana.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
Appreciate you jumping on and working out the time frame. We mentioned that off air. I know you're familiar with it because you spent some time over this side of the world. So appreciate you
Yeah,
working that out with us. And we'll jump straight in, Colin. If you'd like to start by telling us who we're
yeah,
talking about today. I know there's a couple of special people that you've lost and what happened to them.
yeah. So today I wanted to share the story of my wife, Camry, and my son, Chance. I lost both of them 9 days apart, and it was actually earlier this month. And so we can talk through some of the details where it makes sense. But yeah, that's who I'm here for today.
Super recent, Colin. So, I mean, even more kudos to you for accepting the invitation and having a chat about them. Really, really grateful and appreciate it. What happened, leading up, and I guess caused them both individually to pass?
Yeah. So Camry had stage 4 colon cancer, and we had discovered that cancer in May of 2024. And so from that point up until the time that she passed, that was the primary focus as far as what we anticipated being her death. And she ended up, I believe, passing from a couple things. We didn't officially do an autopsy because I just didn't want to, but it was, I believe, a combination of liver failure as well as just the physical exertion from giving birth to our son. So overall, I would say colon cancer is the short answer. And
Yeah.
then for my son, Chance, he was only 9 days old and he was premature. And it was from a colon perforation. So there are a couple medical things that it could be, like SIDS, for example. I didn't want an autopsy for that either. So I don't specifically know for sure, but in general, it was a colon perforation.
Yeah. Kind of fully appreciate that. I don't know that me personally, and I don't know if many others would have wanted to go through that as well. And not being familiar with the US medical situation, I believe it's something you have to, pay extra for to go down. Not that's a reason not to, but I'm sure the pain and anguish and everything else that you're having to deal with would add to that decision.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of it was just feeling like, why, why would I put them through another thing?
Yeah.
And I also didn't feel like it would necessarily give me or family any sort of peace of mind. So it just seemed like an extra step from them being able to fully rest is
Yeah.
how I viewed it.
Yeah. Completely makes sense. So when your wife, Camry, fell
Mhm.
pregnant, were the risks, was there risks explained? Or was there a chance that she would pass away with giving birth as well?
This is a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Hey Luke and Ryan, life gets heavy sometimes, especially when grief hits. For me, that weight often shows up as anxiety.
Yeah, it's not always one big thing. Sometimes it's just life piling up, work, relationships, trying to hold it all together. Suddenly, I'm anxious and don't know why.
Totally. I used to think anxiety meant panic attacks, but for me, it's more like overthinking every choice or feeling like I'm never doing enough.
And it can even hit on good days. Out of nowhere, I'm spiraling over things that haven't even happened yet.
It's easy to feel alone in it, but you're not.
That's why we're talking about our paid partner, BetterHelp.
BetterHelp connects you with credentialed therapists who can help manage anxiety and more.
Most people go to BetterHelp for anxiety, and 69% feel better after just 6 weeks.
Getting started is simple. Fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist. If it's not a fit, you can switch at any time.
Their support team is super responsive, and with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 Trustpilot rating, it's a platform you can count on.
So let BetterHelp help manage your anxiety so it doesn't manage you.
Click the link below or go to betterhelp.com/rememberingthem for 10% off your first month.
Yeah. So we found out that she was pregnant in late February, and we got plugged into a high risk OBGYN as quickly as we could. And they sat with us for probably 2 hours going over all of the risks associated. They pretty much played out every scenario of what could happen and some of the risks associated with that. So, I mean, when I tell you every scenario, I'm talking, we talked through, what if mom passes away, but baby is viable? What do we do? What if mom passes away and baby's not viable? What if baby's delivered and mom passes away? Every single iteration we talked through with the doctors, and they also did a deep assessment of her current health state and used that as a way to help to distinguish which things seemed likely. And so doctors were telling us that she would most likely have a full obstruction of her colon anywhere from 22 to 26 weeks within the pregnancy. And so because of that, we both wanted to make preventative measures, because we both viewed this pregnancy as a beautiful opportunity to continue on her legacy and her love in the form of our child. And we wanted to take that risk. And so she did a stent placement surgery that ended up causing a lot of pain and discomfort for her, even though she was told it would do the exact opposite. And then as time went on, her symptoms were just getting worse and worse, and just not being able to move around as much, in a lot of pain. And there were just so many things going on where it's like, okay, is this the pregnancy? Is this the cancer? Is something else going on? We don't know, but we were going to every appointment. We were going to more frequent appointments because of the high risk. And in retrospect, I think one of the most frustrating elements of it all is that, as I mentioned earlier, the liver was most likely the reason that she had passed. However, over the past 6 months or so, I believe her liver failure was only mentioned twice, and her liver was never properly assessed or monitored. And so by the time that they actually caught what was going on in her liver, they said, it's too late. We can't do anything about it. And so that was devastating for both of us. And at that point, she had already been in the hospital for about a week because of the pain that she was experiencing. And it was predominantly upper abdomen, sternum pain that she was experiencing. And we talked to multiple GIs, and all of the GIs said, yeah, this is probably relating to your colon obstruction. This is probably relating to the pregnancy and your stomach expanding, et cetera, et cetera. Not one doctor identified that it was liver until they got an x-ray that showed them that it was. And so as soon as that happened and we got the x-ray, then the doctors came back around and they're like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And so it reminded both of us of the fallibility of doctors and medical systems and the frustrations around it too. And at that point, like I said, they told us that there isn't anything they could do. There are different procedures that, if it was caught earlier, could have been done, such as removing pieces of the tumor in the liver. But it had grown to the point that when you touched her sternum, it felt like you were touching like a softball or a baseball. Like, it was that hard, and it was distended. And yeah, that really shifted the way in which we were viewing her health journey and what she was going through. And it also is part of why I wanted to come on the podcast today, is for people to just be reminded of how vigilant they need to be in taking ownership of every facet of their medical journey and how valuable that is, because a lot of it Camry wanted to be the pioneer of and really piece together what made most sense to her and what she was feeling. And once she started listening to the doctors, and it was primarily because of the pregnancy that she was doing that, that is when things started to shift for her. And the support that we would have hoped for in terms of identifying the liver issues, we didn't get that until it was too late. And so once that was identified, her palliative care, who had been with her over the course of months throughout this process, the palliative care told me over the phone that Camry had either days or weeks. And that was a devastating call because we believed, and maybe it was naive, but we believed that we did have more time. And her health was declining so rapidly and so quickly that it surprised us in some ways. And so after that point, things just continued to get worse. And it was around 22 weeks, not around, it was on 22 weeks, 6 days of the pregnancy that I sat down with doctors. And at this point, Camry was on a lot of medications. And so her level of clarity was not there as much. And I stepped into another room to talk to the doctors, and they told me, okay, with 23 weeks approaching for your baby, which is the first week of viability that they could do anything for us, they asked me, okay, if Camry passes, do you want us to deliver this baby, or do you want the baby to naturally pass away? And from there, we deep dove into conversations talking about the survival rates per week within the pregnancy and the different long-term conditions associated to each week. And we sat there for probably 2 hours in that room, just going through every scenario of like, okay, if Camry passes, this is what we can do. If we want to schedule a C-section, we can do that. However, it would likely kill Camry to do that. And I left that conversation saying, okay, I don't believe that we would want to pursue a full delivery of this baby if it was at 23 weeks, because of what I saw was the survival rate and the long-term conditions associated to it. It was a really hard decision, but it felt like it was a decision that was made out of love and out of not putting my wife or our son into any sort of additional harm. And so that's where we left conversation there. And then later on in the pregnancy, I said, yes, we want to try. So those were the things that were laid out for us. The next morning is 23 weeks. And Camry gets up that morning to go to the bathroom. And she calls over to me. And I open the bathroom door and she says, my water just broke. And I said, what? And my first thought, being an ignorant man, was like, I think you just peed a lot. And then she was like, get the nurse. So grab the nurse. Then once the nurse comes in, she grabs the OB. And roughly 10, 15 minutes later, they confirm, yes, your water broke. You are in labor. And Mark, the panic that I had, because those decisions I just made the day before,
You had that
and
information, right? That was, yeah.
all of those scenarios that that doctor and I talked through over those couple hours, neither of us brought up her water naturally breaking. We didn't even think that was an option at 23 weeks. So I tried asking Camry, but she was on so many medications that she couldn't give me a proper answer. And so in that moment, I realized, like, whoa, this decision is fully on my shoulders right now. And I started pacing and praying and just trying to figure out what in the world to do. And I left the room to just walk around and think. And as soon as I walked out of the room, I got a text from one of Camry's spiritual mentors who I've never talked to before. But it was the second that I walked out of the room. And I just got the impulse that I should call her. And so I did. She didn't pick up, but I just kept pacing and I walked down the unit. I went down the elevator and then I walked over to the part of the hospital where a lot of young kids with different long-term diseases and conditions would go for some sort of treatment. It's primarily like a child cancer unit.
Yep.
And so I'm sitting in there and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all of these kids with all of these different struggles and challenges. And her spiritual mentor calls me back. I explain to her what's going on. I tell her I don't know what to do. And she says that whatever decision I make will be one that's made in love. And she told me that something that her and Camry talked about a lot was don't get stuck in your head and don't operate out of fear. And in that moment, it was exactly what I needed to hear because I was so scared of the risk. But when she said that, what it reminded me of was the last year that Camry and I had just lived, where every moment and opportunity that we had to love bigger and to love more and to live life, we took it. We traveled, we got engaged, we got married, we bought a new house, we got pregnant. We tried to do everything that we could because we weren't going to let cancer stop us from living. And so that gave me the gust to say, okay, I think we need to try. And so I go back to that room and she's continuing to dilate and her water is continuing to break and the doctors are looking at me and they're like, what do you want to do? And I said, let's try. Let's try. And they're like, okay. And then there was a swarm of a whole medical team that came into that room and they didn't even take her to a delivery room. They just kept her in the room that she was in because of how quick things were moving. And so I get in that room and I look at Camry and I say, we're going to try, babe. She says, we're going to try. I said, yes. And then she closed her eyes. She took a deep breath and she just said, okay. And after that moment, she locked in and she started to deliver that baby. And she started to boss the room around and just be the Camry that I know her to be, who is just a fiery spirited woman. And she was telling people to stop looking at her and she was flipping around to every position that she needed to be in order to feel like she could push. And then in less than an hour, our boy was there and he was delivered. And what was crazy about all of that, Mark, is that both Camry and myself and all of our family and the doctors, none of us thought that they were going to have the opportunity to meet. And in that room, Camry got to scoot to the end of her bed and meet our son. And that is a gift that I'm going to hold with me forever. And after she gave birth, they took him up to the NICU, and we hadn't had a name picked out yet. We had some ideas, but hours go by and I go to check in on him and he's doing okay. And I go back downstairs and I tell her he's doing okay. And I ask her, "What do you want to name him?" And she said, "Chance." I said, "Okay, Chance it is." Chance is doing okay. And it was such a beautiful, crazy, hectic, chaotic day. And I had so much joy and pride for Camry and all of the strength that she embodied in that day. And I think that everything in her was fighting to be able to bring that boy to this earth. Because as the day went on and as her health declined, it declined very rapidly. And what was frustrating is that throughout the day, I was asking nurses and doctors, "Is she okay? This doesn't seem normal. Why does she have that level of shortness of breath?" And I was being kind of dismissed and was being told, "Oh, this happens after pregnancies. Women can be tired." It's like this doesn't seem like that though, and she's also someone with stage 4 cancer. So even if she is tired, that tired is going to carry on her differently. And so it's being dismissed. And later in that day, her palliative care doctor comes into the room and she looks at her for probably 5 seconds and she says, "Collin, Camry has minutes or hours. Say your goodbyes." And something that really stuck that her palliative care said to me was, grief is the purest form of love. And I believe that to be so very true. And I've been experiencing that over the past month of her being gone. And as we were saying our goodbyes, Camry, being the wonderful human that she is, still wanted to comfort others in that time. And something that you should know about Camry is that she was a yoga teacher, and yoga was her passion in life. It was where she found a lot of her inner peace and where she was able to continue to exercise and move and find solace within herself. And something that she taught me and always taught all of her students is that your breath is the most important thing. And so after I told her that I loved her and she told me that she loved me, she looked at me. She said, "Collin, just breathe. Just breathe." And I did. And some time went on and some family got to say their goodbyes. And later that night, she passed. And the thing with being with someone who has a terminal illness is, and I've some of my new grief buddies, if you will, have given me some good terminology, and one of those things is anticipatory grief. And I realized that that was something that I had been experiencing for quite some time over the last year. And I knew that, but putting the terminology on it helped me to understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling once her passing actually arrived, because I was devastated, but I was also glad that she was no longer in pain. And it is so painful to see the person that you love most go through the agonizing, debilitating pain that she went through. And as time has gone on, I continue to think about the fact that the pain that she was experiencing was so overwhelming and so agonizing that I, again, am just, as much as I would want her here, I don't want to force her to be here in pain. I want her to be free of her pain, and she has that now. And as there were some days after her passing, I had a lot of friends and family surrounding me, and they were asking me, is us being around too much, and what do you need, and all of those things that people get asked in the grief process. And something that stuck with me that I had been telling my friends was, I would rather be overwhelmed by love than feel like I need it. And so when I had those moments where I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of people in my house right now. There's a lot of people trying to call me. There's a lot of people trying to text me. I have too many meals that are starting to go bad. I realized, like, well, hold on. As overwhelming as this is an outpouring of love. And soak that up. Soak that up, because there are so many people that love me and loved her and our collective family, that this is way better than experiencing the opposite, where I have nobody reaching out to me for 3 days in a row or whatever.
The Remembering Them podcast is supported by My Legacy Message. How do you want to be remembered? My Legacy Message provides a service that delivers a personalized keepsake video to your loved ones, often as a surprise after you pass. My Legacy Message, be remembered.
So we've decided to split the chat with Collin into two parts. He spoke wonderfully for such a great length of time, talking about the circumstances in which Camry was diagnosed and her journey through the hospital system and the pregnancy and then her eventual passing, and also the discussion around Chance and his short time on Earthside, and eventually his passing as well. So we've decided, in respect to the story that Collin told, and then also then talking about Camry, more so him and her individually as a relationship, we've split this conversation into two. So please join us next week. We'll certainly release the episodes in succession, but looking forward to hearing more about Camry in the next episode. Just a quick reminder to jump on Patreon, a way to support the podcast and have exclusive access to chats with our guests and also professional guests that we have on, a bit more of a relaxed chat. It's about $6 a month, US $9 a month. Australian, patreon.com/remembering them podcast. And also a reminder to give the podcast a rating and review. Looking forward to the next chat with Collin for sure. Follow us on all of our socials. We'll of course release the episodes, notice of the episodes on our socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Reminder that we have the My Legacy Message service, mylegacymessage.com.au, to leave a video message to your loved ones, often a surprise after you've passed, and also the partnership with BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/remembering them podcast, 10% off your first month's membership with them if you need to speak to a credentialed therapist to help you along your grief journey. Thank you for joining me for this initial chat with Collin, and looking forward to the conversation next week.
The Remembering Them podcast is created for entertainment purposes. Mark, Ryan, and Luke are not licensed mental health professionals. If you would like to discuss your mental well-being, several resources are available in Australia. Information about these services are available in the podcast notes. Please take the time to contact your loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate and love them.